Yes, I do believe there's a pattern or formula for becoming a successful entrepreneur. Unfortunately, it's not a three-step formula. Normally what I do when I visit universities and talk about the Center for Entrepreneurship, what we do and try to inspire students to pursue entrepreneurial passions, I tell them 6 steps that they can follow. 1, you have to really dream big. You have to think of a big problem to solve. And the reason I say that is the amount of effort, energy that goes into an individual person's effort, energy that goes into building a small business is about the same as building a very large business. So it does not make sense to expend all that effort and energy trying to do something small. So the larger it is, the more will be the incentive, and the more will be the the drive to accomplish that success. So 1, dream big. Find a big problem that should translate into a big market for your product or service, and then try to come up with a product that addresses the problem in that market. Number 2, you have to execute. A lot of people, they stop at that stage. They come up with good ideas, they identify big markets, they think of big businesses that they can build, but don't take the next step, which is an equally important one, which is to execute and be fearless. There's this almost I would say that our educational system has a lot to contribute to it, but most of the people that are coming through our education system and higher education system, they're being trained to be engineers or doctors or business professionals and business administrators, and if you can shed that fear that somebody else has to provide for you and write a check for you every month, and just have confidence in yourself, belief in yourself, and go ahead and start your own business, chances are that a year, 2 years down the road, even if you fail, you'll end up a lot better than where a lot of your colleagues would be if they were working for somebody else. Number 3, you have to work really, really hard and persevere at whatever it is that you're doing. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs, especially first-time entrepreneurs, they give up very, very quickly. That's very dangerous. As long as you're getting positive feedback from the market, from your customers or prospective customers, you need to continue to persevere and build the business and continue to build growth in the business. And earlier on, it comes very gradually, but invariably, if you're addressing a large market, you're servicing your customers right, you're building the right product or delivering the right service, you will get to a stage where the growth sort of suddenly it grows like on a very steep curve. Number 4, I tell entrepreneurs that it's equally important to know when to persevere and keep pushing along the same path, and when to pivot and adjust your strategy. And it's a very fine line. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs are not very good at deciding when to just continue to push ahead and when to change the strategy and perhaps do something different. There are ways that that can help you make that decision. One is that if you believe that the original vision or the thesis with which the business was started continues to hold true, you keep persevering. But it also means that you have to continue to listen to the market and feedback from your customers and various stakeholders of the ecosystem in which you're operating, to be able to make that decision. Second, get some good advisors, people who've been there, done that, understand the industry you're operating in, understand the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and listen to them. Listen to a lot of them, but then at the end of the day, you have to make your own decision. Third, if you believe that you're continuing to meet small growth milestones, the leadership of the company is equally committed. They're not, getting nervous about the vision. Your workforce is very motivated and driven and is continuing to meet whatever milestones that you've set in your business. That means that you ought to continue to persevere and grow. And if none of that is true, if the market is telling you something different, if the advisors are telling you something different, if your own workforce, your team, the rest of the leadership is getting, hazy about the vision, and the original premise or hypothesis on which you build the business is beginning to change, then it's time to pivot and respond and do something different. Number 5, you have to really celebrate failure. You have to learn to celebrate failure. And I think probably if one step, or one thing that can be a takeaway from this is the only surefire way of succeeding is to just not accept failure and give up. And I can cite dozens of examples of very successful entrepreneurs of today who initially failed, and some failed spectacularly. But the one common trait that they have is that they can continue to get back up and change direction slightly, and then keep executing. And last up, I always add is it's one thing to be successful yourself as an entrepreneur, and you already get lots of opportunity to make an impact when you're a successful entrepreneur. You're changing lives of your employees, you're delivering value to your customers, you're just creating more value in the world. But I think it's also important to give back once you are successful to the ecosystem that help you succeed, to work with young kids and young entrepreneurs and help them succeed in their businesses so that this process can continue, and collectively we can grow and become successful. Well, I think entrepreneurs are in it for more than themselves, and people who are working for others are primarily just trying to look after themselves. That's a major difference. One of the things that I realized very earlier on in my career, I spent a couple of years working with somebody after graduation, and it was precisely this realization that prompted me to do something entrepreneurial. And I often say that to students when I'm visiting universities, that if a very good way to very objectively sort of figure out what's the worth of working for somebody else is to just map out your salary for, say, the next 10 years working for somebody else. So if you're a graduate of a decent university in Pakistan, you probably start with a salary of about 50,000 rupees, maybe 60,000 or 70,000 if you're really good. And then you build a 10-15% salary increase over the next 10 years and consider that your revenue. And then you look at your current lifestyle and you map out all the expenses and sort of put them in a spreadsheet and try to come up with the savings that you would have working for somebody else for the next 10 years and treat those as your free cash flows. And if you discount that and try to come up with the net present value, which is a financial term, you can look it up, you'll realize that oftentimes it comes up to the value of a Mehran car or at best a Toyota Corolla, which basically means that working for somebody else for the next 10 years of your life, helping somebody else chase their dreams, and maybe trying to turn you into something that you don't want to become. The net present value in very objective terms, in financial terms, is basically 5, 7, 10, 15 lakh, 20 lakh rupees. And it's just not worth it. So if you objectively look at the thesis of working for somebody else for the next 10 years, you basically realize that you are barely making a difference in your own lifestyle, in your own living. And then you contrast that with, the launching a business and growing it, employing hundreds of people, and hitting it big. And that gives you at least an opportunity or hope to create value for others and create value in others' lives as well, which you can't do if you're working for somebody else. And I think once you have that realization, a lot of the fear of doing something entrepreneurial or chasing entrepreneurial ventures, it just sort of vanishes and goes away. And for people who often ask, what if you fail, because there's a high risk of failure when you're doing something entrepreneurial, I often tell them that 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, if you do fail in your venture and you don't have the energy or the inclination to continue to persevere and build a business, one thing that you can do is do a net present value of working for somebody else from that point onwards. And you realize that in that 1 year where your colleague after graduation would have basically done photocopying or manage a few spreadsheets for their managers, you would have put together a team, researched a market, developed a product, taken it to market, perhaps even raised some money, generated some revenue for your business, and then fail. And then if you go into the market and try to look for a job, I believe, it's my belief, that you'll be valued a lot more than somebody who's just done photocopies for a manager after graduation. So it was that realization that made me an entrepreneur, and I believe that's the main difference between an entrepreneur that is working for himself and an employee who's working with somebody else. Definition of success varies for everybody else. Everybody defines it for themselves. And I also think that the definition of success varies as you grow in life as well. Earlier on, it's perhaps when you're going to school, getting good grades, then getting a good job and making money and such. But I think eventually, when everything is said and done, you're truly successful if you've achieved the right balance and are happy, in all the various spheres of life that surround you, and your business or economics being just one of them. If you're happy where you are with your business, if you're happy with where you are with your family, your friends, your community, your country, maybe your religion, if all these things that matter to you, that are connected to you, if you believe that you've accomplished the right balance between them, and you're sort of met the objectives of rewarding each of these relationships in your life, and you've achieved that sort of optimal level, then and you're truly happy, then I think you're successful. That's basically the bottom line. Very early on, when we started eForce, we realized the importance of working with the right people. And I personally believe that makes or breaks your businesses, your ventures, your entrepreneurial dreams. If you start working with the wrong people, you will not succeed. You may hire somebody for a short-term gain that might be visible at the time you're getting somebody on board, but I think longer-term success is very highly dependent on the kind and quality of people that you're working with in your business. So I believe in the biggest lessons learned is that you don't make somebody a co-founder, or you engage somebody as an employee in your business if there's not a complete sort of overlap of values and culture and the vision and the kind of things that are driving you to work on the business that you're working on. And particularly for startups and young businesses, the cost of getting the wrong person on board could really crush the company. So one piece of advice that I've learned from my personal life is that don't get somebody on board just because they seem to have the right Java skills, or they seem to have connections with the investors, or they apparently they seem to be an expert in the industry that you're operating in. You have to really make sure that they buy into all the reasons why you are doing that business. And you have to ensure that they have a nice overlap with your strengths and weaknesses, and together you complement each other. You have to make sure that they will work with high energy and passion, the same passion that you're working on your business with. You have to ensure that they're of very high integrity. You have to, aside from whether they're competent or not for the job that you're engaging that resource for. So that's one of the biggest lessons learned from my ventures. I'll probably skip the 2 years that I spent working for somebody else. I think at that time, this is in late 90s, it made sense because platforms like the LUMS Center for Entrepreneurship, or I was in US at the time, like Y Combinator and Techstars, they just weren't there. And the only way you could engage with the industry and network and build relationships were to actually work for somebody who's operating in the industry that you want to do something in. But now I believe as you graduate from college, there are platforms that are out there that help you in those formative months when you're building a business. So if it were up to me, I'd probably right out of college join a platform like the Center for Entrepreneurship at LUMS and try to build a business. I would do that because one of the facts that I'm very aware of all the time in Pakistan is that college-going kids and students, they probably represent the largest age demographic in Pakistan. And while in college, if you're really looking to identify problems that this particular demographic is facing, and if you can come up with a solution, a product or a service that addresses that problem, if you can start building relationships while you're in college because you want to launch a business as soon as you graduate, it puts you in a very enviable position to have very intimate knowledge of what are the problems that this very large demographic in Pakistan is facing. It gives you an opportunity to, particularly if you're going to a good college or university, to build relationships and find co-founders that complement your strengths and sort of fill the void in the weaknesses that you have. And then you can join platforms like this and build a compelling business very quickly. So that's probably one thing that I would change if I were to sort of restart my career in 2016. That's a very important question. We go around, we encourage and we incite a lot of graduating students or young graduates to follow entrepreneurial dreams and build businesses. And I think it's important that they're in a position to make the decision whether whatever it is that they're doing, they should continue doing or not, or should pivot, or perhaps find a job or whatever. I think it's a hard question to answer, but you need to be very aware, and you have to have your listening mode on when you're leading an entrepreneurial venture. And this was something I said earlier as well, that whenever you start a business, you start with a landscape or a problem hypothesis, and you say that this customer segment that has this profile, has this big problem, and it needs to be addressed by developing, this product, which will get distributed to the customer using these distribution channels. This is how we'll make money. These are all the partners that we need to partner with. These are all the resources that we need. These are all the expenses that we're going to incur in building this business. And I think the short way of finding out whether you need to continue or not, or giving up and pivoting, is when a lot of these hypotheses change on you, when the underlying market changes, when something disruptive comes along and says, hey, you can't sell films anymore, you have to get into the digital space and get into digital photography and whatnot. So as long as the original premise and hypothesis on which you're building the business continue to hold true, it should not matter that you're not making a lot of progress, or you're making progress at a lower rate than what you had projected or expected. Number two, if you have your co-founders, if you have your employees that are continuing to believe in your vision and your mission, they're continuing to work as hard with as much passion, they're continuing to build the product, meet milestones, make progress, you shouldn't give up, you should continue. I think if your customers are responding to whatever it is that you bring to them, they're responding in a positive way, they're willing to pay you maybe a little lower price than what you had assumed, it's not time to give up, you should continue. And when a lot of these things change, and a lot of the feedback that you're getting from the market, and which assumes that you're very you're sort of listening to your customers very intently. When that changes, then it's time to pivot, and then you have to decide whether it's a slight pivot that you make in the business that you're already doing, or it's something that's just not for you, because entrepreneurship is not easy. I'll be the first one to admit that it's not for everyone. But it's also not very difficult to realize that it's not for you also. Some of the easy things are that you have to work really, really hard. If you're not willing to work 14, 15 hours a day in order to do whatever it is that you're doing, don't do it. Might as well go and find a 9-to-5 job. If you're not willing to put or invest everything that you own, your bike, your car, even if you have to sell your precious iPhone or Android phone in order to pay the salary or acquire a resource that you need for the business, and if you're not willing to do that, don't build a business. Go work for somebody else. I think you need very good communication skills to be a successful entrepreneur, and if you don't have those communication skills, if you can't infect others with your vision, you can't inspire employees to work for you, or bring on co-founders, or effectively sell to customers, or convince investors to invest in your business, you're going to have a very hard time building a business. So either very damn quickly you get a co-founder that sort of fills that void in the company, or you give up and again you work for somebody else. So there's I have this pet presentation that I normally give at universities, and there are 10 to 12 questions I ask, and the answer to all of those have to be true for you to launch a business, to be entrepreneurial. If the answer is no to some of these questions, then they're better off working with somebody else. I don't know if I was inspired by somebody in history, honestly. My mother passed away. If I could talk to somebody in history, I'd probably give anything to talk to my mother. She was the bedrock, the foundation that I was built on as well, and was always there to encourage me and push me along whatever I wanted to do. So maybe her, if I have to answer this question.